Louise Cervantes from Linskill Nursery, and today I'm going to share with you our real experience of a pilot Ofsted inspection that we took part in back in October 2005. I'm going to talk specifically about SEND, disadvantaged children and inclusion. I have already done a presentation about the full experience of the Ofsted inspection, but today I'm going to particularly try and narrow that down a little bit for yourselves. So I'm going to walk you through what the process felt like, what the inspectors really focused on, and what we learned, and hopefully that will help you prepare effectively for when it is your Ofsted inspection turn. So the inspection process began with the initial phone call, which was over Microsoft Teams, which was new for us. Now, our phone call did last about an hour. I know that when you look online in terms of preparing for Ofsted, it says half an hour, and I don't know whether that was just because that we were a pilot and they were learning at the same time, but definitely expect about half an hour, but for us, like I say, it was 1 hour. It's a very detailed, professional, it's a very much two-way conversation, and in that conversation, expect to talk about your settings context, who are your families, who are the children, where do they come from, what's the community like. You'll be expected to talk about the strengths of your setting and what the priorities are and what's coming next, and how inclusion kind of underpins and shapes your practice. They're very much interested in what education you deliver and in terms of how it improves the outcomes for disadvantaged children. So you'll be expected to explain how your curriculum is built around the needs of your children in terms of their starting points and within the context of their family and community. You'll talk about planning the visit, so you'll be picking like some case sampling of children who you will track during observations. So my biggest tip is, in terms of this one, is just be confident explaining why your curriculum looks the way it does. So basically bring it back to the children every time that your curriculum is shaped around the needs of your children and their families. So in terms of knowing your families, knowing your community and how you've shaped your curriculum, the inspectors are really interested in your demographics. They want a clear picture of family backgrounds, special educational needs and disabilities. They want to know the individuals who've got any language barriers or language and communication profiles and needs. And they'll want to know like levels of vulnerability. So what do you think? Who do you think is vulnerable and why? So I get our information from the local authority ward data, which is available online via some links that you can find on North Tyneside Council website. So for example, I was able to share that most of our children are white British, from working families, they all live locally to the nursery, and that the majority, when they start, are in line with age-related expectations developmentally, but that we do closely monitor for any emerging needs with systems in place to identify and target support, like using the graduated approach. We talked about that. I was able to let them know that 99% of our children in attendance do receive the 30 hours working entitlement. The remaining 1%, they actually earn above the threshold. And I also talked about how our parents are typically really engaged and very supportive of their children's learning. I talked about that, how we've designed our curriculum in that it's very physically active, it's experiential and hands-on, and it's very much rooted in the local environment and community. Some of you might know that Linskill Nursery is based within a large community hub, so it made a lot of sense for us to also have community as a significant strand of our curriculum. So because we know that young children learn best through movement and exploration and meaningful life experience, we've got things like forest school and outdoor nature-based learning, because we know that these help develop resilience, independence, problem solving, and really support emotional well-being, which is very much high on the agenda at the moment. We know that children learn through movement and that this strengthens their physical development, their coordination, their self-regulation, whilst also supporting communication, language and literacy. So we've really intentionally built strong community links with visits and visitors. They're a very much regular feature on planning. And this is so children get a sense of belonging, social understanding and awareness of the world beyond the setting. So this, for us, helps to make sure that children make good academic progress. So inspectors, they want to see strong links between what your children need, what you prioritise in your curriculum, and the outcomes that you are working towards. In terms of inclusion, it's really central to the inspection process. Inspectors focused heavily on identifying your vulnerable children, so who is disadvantaged in your setting, who has special educational needs and or disabilities, who's known to social care or previously known to social care. They used lots of joint observations, discussions with children, discussions with your staff team, discussions with leaders, discussions with parents, and they'll use case sampling, so they'll track some particular individuals throughout the setting to understand children's real experiences. So they want to know what it's like for a child to attend your setting, and in particular what it's like for a child who's disadvantaged. They want to know how you identify any barriers to children's learning. So it might be, have you identified any health needs, developmental needs, emotional needs? Is there anything specific to that family or the community, or any social challenges? Does the child or family have any protected characteristics? And are there any factors specific to your setting's context? And they'll want to know how you're overcoming those barriers, and to make sure that those children, that your curriculum is ambitious and that all children make learning progress. So how do you tailor your support? How do you reduce the impact of those barriers? And ultimately, how are you improving the learning and the outcomes for those children? So on the visit day itself, at the start of the day, the inspector confirmed the itinerary that you agreed during the phone call, and that does help everyone feel reassured and know what to expect. However, they did make it clear that they will adapt their plans to explore anything significant that did emerge. So like if they wanted to get more information on something, or they see something that they want to take a deeper look at, then the format of the day will change. So overall, the approach felt very much more collaborative than previous inspections. It was, really professional. There was a lot of empathy. There was lots of regular check-ins. They checked in with the leaders throughout the process. They were asking us as managers to check in with the team to make sure that they were okay throughout the process. It became really apparent that it was genuine, there was genuine care there for staff's well-being. So like I said, most of the evidence is gathered through shared observations with leaders, and I think it's worth saying that it's the leaders who know the children best. So if that's not you as a manager, then use some other leaders like room leaders, room seniors. That's what we did, because we know that those staff could talk more confidently about children. So inspectors will want to track the experience of those case sample children, like I said, those that are disadvantaged. They'll also observe all children within their play and their daily routines. They'll also observe the practitioner interactions, and with practitioner interactions with children. Don't worry about paperwork, they will not be asking for paperwork. So in terms of our case sampling, who we chose, we agreed to specific children. At the time, we didn't actually have any children with SEND, but we did have 2 children referred to speech and language, but there was no cognition or sort of like specific learning needs. And we did have siblings who had previous involvement with children's social care, but who had no current plans in place or any specific learning support needs. But we did set up a conversation between those dads and the inspector so they could share their experience. So we chose, in the baby room, because we had lots of new starters and there was lots of unsettled babies, and we thought, how could we showcase this as a strength rather than feeling under pressure because of unsettled children? So we decided to track a child in the baby room who was new. So it really helped us because we could talk about the key person system. We talked about our settling in processes and just how we support those babies and families during the transition from nursery to home. We also decided to track a child in the toddler room because we know that this is a key developmental stage where any concerns might begin to emerge, particularly around like sort of language and communication. This helped us show how we early identify what targeted support we put in place and how our practice adapts to an individual child's needs. We then also wanted to talk about a child with uneven development in the preschool. Typically, that child was working beyond age-related expectations in lots of curriculum areas, but not in others, like namely PSED. So we wanted to be able to talk about and demonstrate how we individualised planning. We showed that the curriculum was flexible yet still ambitious for that child, and we're able to talk about how we support and work closely with the family to help that child make progress, particularly in PSED. So in terms of speaking with leaders, the inspector spoke in depth with leaders about your strategic priorities, how your decisions are made and what improvement looks like. So we were able to discuss our annual improvement plan. Now I know that there's no requirement anymore to have a SEF, but we do find it useful. We normally would develop our improvement plan in line with any previous inspections recommendations. So at the moment, for example, we have two key focuses within our improvement plan, and that's around the explicit teaching and learning of maths, because we'd observed that our teaching of maths was not as strong as in other areas. Staff didn't have the confidence, and that we noticed as leaders that there were fewer observations of children around maths. So we wanted to make sure we've got an action plan around that. And secondly, for us, we also want to increase the diversity awareness, because we know that the children aren't getting a real multicultural experience because of those factors, like I said before, that around the demographics. So we want to make sure that they have a rich experience which is reflective of the wider world. So the key message here is that we were able to explain that and know where the setting is now and where it's going next and why those priorities mattered. And what I would say is that within your leadership and strategic priorities is that if you do have significant cohorts of where children are disadvantaged, that is where your priorities should lie. In terms of getting the feedback, one surprise for us is that there's no longer a requirement for formal recommendations. The feedback focused on strengths, the impact of your education, and the areas for reflection rather than actions. So you are able to sort of talk about what you felt was going really well, what you felt that you could improve upon. And then when the inspector actually shares what grade they are going to give you, they ask if you agree. So be prepared, if you don't agree, to have a very robust challenge as to why you don't agree and showcase and talk about it or show them other information. I don't know how likely they will be to change their mind, but that opportunity was there to answer if you agree or not. So in summary, the key takeaways I would say is just really know your children and families well, because that will demonstrate why you've developed the curriculum the way you have, and you need to be able to explain why you organise your curriculum in the way in which you have. I've put in about safeguarding here because now under the new toolkit it is either met or not met. So safeguarding, make sure that your entire team is really strong. They've got to have good, sound safeguarding knowledge. And then leaders, you must clearly be able to articulate your strategic priorities, know where your setting is now and know where it's going next and why. And then don't panic about paperwork, just focus on the impact. They didn't look at any paperwork when they came out. They said that they will be able to see your curriculum and education in action. They'll see it with the children, they'll see it through and hear it through talking to the staff, the parents. So it's not about what data you've collected or what your website says. They'll be able to get a sense of whether you are delivering on your education through the phone call and then through the backup observations. So overall, I would say the inspection felt really rigorous, but it was fair. It was really conversational, very two-way. It didn't feel like an interrogation. And I would say strong leadership, knowledge was key. So I hope you found that useful. Because I'm not there in person, I will be able to answer any questions anyone might have. I can be contacted on louise@linskill.org. I think Judith might share my email. I don't mind that at all. So like I say, I hope you find that useful. And I'll see everyone soon. Thanks. Bye.